Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Throwback Thursday. If you were with us on the previous stream just before this, we were working through some technical solutions to hopefully up the overall quality of the stream. And eventually my computer burned down in a blaze of glory. So we're back to the previous solution. This whole week we've been streaming from home. Here in Oklahoma, we got stuck, lots of snow and lots of ice. So kind of last minute, I had been setting up, even following along with Flesh and Blood. They announced a skirmish series where you could actually play a tournament through webcam, and the stores are going to be hosting it and whatnot. And so I had been looking at setting up a webcam stream from home. Fortunately, that gave me the equipment to even try to do something like this, but couldn't quite get it. So here we are, we're back. If you're unfamiliar with this game, it's the Middle-earth CCG from Iron Crown Enterprises. This was first published in, I think, 95 or 96, thereabouts. It's a game I had been loosely aware of for quite some time. And then late 2019, there's this brick of 10 decks called the Challenge decks. And I had known it existed, and it was kind of the, recommended introductory product for this game, and as old collectible card games, which crazily is happening more and more now. But the value of those things can get pretty ludicrous. And so I found a pretty good deal on it, got it. And then it's a very Unwon Addict, what up, saying it was actually 95. I thought it was 95. We've been playing a lot of these old CCGs, so hit or miss on exactly the year in my brain that some of these came out. But all that to say, before I even played with anybody, I wanted to make sure I had a decent understanding of the rules. So I bought the Wizard's Companion Guide, which the Wizards is the name of the first set. And they actually did these. I just got this one, which I was really excited about. This is the Liveless Eye player guide, but they did those kind of like 90s style strategy guides for the various sets that were coming out. And I read through that book several times, and I was just poring over the rules, and I didn't want to necessarily have someone sitting across the table from me while I was learning and trying to teach them. And I finally was about comfortable enough to teach this game. And by the way, I was nowhere close, actually, now having played, but I felt like I was starting to get comfortable enough where it wouldn't just be head down in the rule book the whole time. And that's when the pandemic hit. So the pandemic hit, we started streaming a lot more. We started doing Throwback Thursdays, finally convinced Steven to sit down and play on Throwback Thursday, and have just kind of like low-key been in the back of my brain obsessed with this game. We've streamed it 4 or 5 times now. Anytime that Steven's not available and I'm solo and we're doing a Thursday, it's been Middle-earth CCG. And there's just something about this game. It's a combination of, I learned this later, apparently it was designed by people with a very strong RPG background. And it makes a lot of sense because the entire game leans into theme and story. And a lot of times I compare playing the game to like reading a book. It's how it feels like it. And it's the exact opposite of the kind of games that I typically will sink my teeth into. I like, streamlined, clean, a lot of the more modern games, right? Flesh and Blood, Ashes, Destiny, that kind of thing. This is the exact other end of the spectrum. But something about that chunkiness is actually part of the appeal of the game itself. It feels like you're kind of reading through a Lord of the Rings book. The art's unbelievable. It's got its own style. And the thing I think it is, I don't know if this is true or not, but it feels like physical paintings that are on a card, not necessarily just like digital art that's being printed onto a card. A good example of this, one of my favorite cards, is the Gandalf card. I think we can make that pop. We'll make sure our tech's working and make sure that's showing, and whatnot. But like, there's just a vibe that's going on with this game that is unlike anything I've ever seen. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to a table shot. If you're new, someone was asking me earlier if I could give a basic rundown of the game. So I'm going to do that. But it's worth noting as well, I'm playing what I call the open world solo mode, which is a version of the game that I put together after playing a couple times with Steven. We're in a pandemic, not really getting to see very many people. And so I wanted to be able to keep playing and testing and tweaking, but didn't really have the opponents typically available to do it. And there is a really cool, I've been looking more into the ARDA format, which is the long-standing a way to play the game. You can play it solo. It's kind of more like a draft cube kind of sealed environment, which I am ultimately planning on putting together. But with the solo mode, I essentially wanted to be able to take the hero, the free people side of my deck, and do whatever I wanted to do in Middle-earth and test that side of my deck and get a feeling for what it would be like to play that side of my deck against actual live opponents. So we'll work through how that solo mode works in a minute as well. And then I'm going to be actually using one of the challenge decks that I was mentioning. Let me go ahead and switch that table shot. Make sure everything's working. Right, so we got the pops working. Was Gandalf able to come up clearly and everything? All right, great. And so one of the challenge decks I'm going to be using, it's the very first introductory game. We use the Gandalf and Saruman decks, and it makes sense. Gandalf was like an Aragorn Arwen or an Aragorn situation, and then Saruman was just Saruman. How can you not? But I have there's the challenge decks. There were 10 of them, and so 5 of them are wizards. So the one I'm going to be playing today, I think, is Palando and the Dwarves, which I am excited to get. I haven't really seen very many Dwarves in this game, so I want to check them out. And then there's Radagast, and then there's Alatar, and then there's actually 5 Nazgul, and I'm particularly excited to eventually get to that. But I didn't really know this at first when I bought the challenge decks. Even there are essentially 4 types of characters you can play in this game. You can play the wizards, which are there are 5 wizards that came out at first. The other thing are fallen wizards, which I actually opened a box of the White Hand on stream, part of the box, and then realized that most of those cards weren't going to work for the decks I was using. And then they introduced Nazgul. So that's actually the other 5 challenge decks. You can play as a minion, and your main character is actually a Nazgul instead of a wizard. And you're trying to go defeat their wizard and gain the favor of the Dark Lord Sauron. You can actually also technically play as Sauron. I didn't know that either. And then there are these crazy rare Balrog decks where you can actually be the Balrog and all of his crazy minions. So at some point I'll play Fallen Wizard and Minion, and if I ever am lucky enough to find a Balrog deck or set of decks, maybe we'll eventually get there. But today I'm planning on using basically the good cards from that Palando deck with him and his dwarves, and we'll run that down in a second. So you'll see here, this is, again, one of the many appeals of the game to me, which you can see my table, is this map. This is a map of Middle-earth, and literally I'm going to use these Marvel miniatures that I have painted to basically signify where my various characters are. Let me see where my map's at, okay, in the game. It's actually convenient. That's where my face is. There's like a map key over here. But you basically have groups of characters, right, that are just roaming around Middle-earth doing various things. So I'm going to use these to mark. I actually bought some of the Lord of the Rings miniatures from Games Workshop so that I could put those together and paint them, partially because that's actually a game I also want to check out, but also they are going to make great markers going across the table in this mat. Ryan Roper saying, when Covenant Celebration happens, I'll bring Balrog stuff. Man, I'm a little bit jealous that you have a copy of that. David Whitfield saying, I'm going to check him a chat real quick. Morning, Zach. One Zach to rule them all, eh? Yeah, I'm not exactly a ring of power, but we are here. We're flying solo, and it's at least working some amount. David Badgel saying, what does lidless add to the table? I have the first one, but not the second. You have the first lidless set, or I'm not sure what you're saying there. I know lidless eye introduces the Nazgul and the ability to play as them in the game, and mostly as like minions and stuff. Andrew Cartwright saying, don't feel bad, Zach. And Ryan seems to have everything. Seems like a good guy to know. Okay, so I'm going to give a 10,000 foot perspective on how to play this game. Now, I actually did I wrote a couple blogs. I'm going to link to one really quick. Let me get that link. And this is a summary, because again, the rule book for this thing, even though it's small, typical 90s rule book, is like 40 pages long. And the Wizard's Companion guide was, 100, 150 pages long. So I basically summarized all the rules and broke them down in that blog that I just linked. You can find those on the website. It's just called How to Play the Middle-earth CCG if you're watching this back later and the link's not showing up in chat. And I'm going to be reading from that. So when I'm teaching the game, the first thing I always talk about is how you win the game. So you win the game essentially by scoring the most marshaling points. So I'll pull up a card real quick. Let me grab that Palando deck and find something that he might score. Even if we pull up Gildor, let's see if that happens. I'm excited that he's a character I haven't really had a chance to play as Gildor. And on the top left of Gildor's card, presuming that is going to be on the screen, I see Bryce's face. It's nice to be able to see your face again, Bryce, because I get a sense for how well the pop is going or not. Something wrong? Seems like something's wrong. You can see the card here on the table. We'll see if they can figure that out. But in the top left of Gildor's card, there's a 1. That's how many marshalling points it's worth. A lot of cards have that number in the corner. And essentially at the end of the game, you're trying to have the most points. That's the most common way to win. And the end of game actually gets triggered in a unique way. You play games in deck count. So if you're playing a 1-deck game, basically once both players have made it all the way through their deck, the end of the game gets triggered. You go to the Council of Elrond and you see who wins. If you're playing a 2-deck game, you go through your deck twice and so on and so forth. And so naturally, the thing about the number of times you go through your deck is that if you're going through multiple times, you're going to naturally score cards out of your deck. And so your deck's going to get smaller and smaller. And so if you play, a 5-deck game as an example, you should pretty much be able to score your entire deck, I would assume. So I think the average is 1 or 2, 2 being the most common. And then a couple other things, technically, looking down, it's really just the scores. Then I'm going to look at some of the card types, right? So each character represents a wizard. Each player represents a wizard. And you actually don't start the game with your wizard in play, even though the wizard can come in play. So my starting characters, and I'm just going to read these down. And it's really nice that one of the good things about these challenge decks, there's basically like a 2-page piece here about this deck. Which gives you advice on like, here's how you're going to score, and here's kind of your strategy, and here's your minion, the bat hazard strategy, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll actually cover that as well before I dive in. Bryce, we good on the pops? We figure that out? Okay, great. So my first character is Thorin II. Thorin 2 for pops at home. He's worth 3 marshalling points. And some things that I didn't know up front, actually, the icon behind the points actually tells you the kind of points that it's scoring, and there's categories that you score points in, and there's certain categories that if you don't score any points in for the whole game, at the end of the game, your opponent's points in that category are double. So you need to be capable of scoring some points in every way. So a lot of times, you'll see people playing certain kinds of cards just to score that one thing and then move along. So Thorin has 8. You have to see the mind stat there with the like white shape of a head behind him. And his mind stat is how many points of your mind he takes, right? So you start the game with 20, and he takes 8 of those, which is pretty significant. Then the hand is his direct influence. And so this is actually characters that are with him don't count their mind stat against your total if they're less than that, right? So he has 2. So one character that's a 2 would take that up and use that up. And then he's got on the bottom left here, you'll see a 5/8. So the 5 is his prowess. That's basically his ability to fight. And the 8 is his body. So if he gets hit in a fight, that's how good he is at not getting damaged or discarded or removed from the game. Also, you'll see kind of the middle of the card, there's some words: warrior, scout, diplomat, dwarf. Those are his keywords. So there's going to be cards that say only playable if you have a dwarf present, or only playable if you have a warrior present, that kind of a thing. Then he has unique cards work in 2 ways, right? First thing is that you can only have 1 in play. Second thing is you and your opponent both can't have the same uniques in play. And also, you can only have 1 copy of this in your deck, period. And all uniques work that way. So if you're collecting, you only need 1. Brian's saying, pops look great. The video quality is a bit out of focus. Anyone else experiencing that? Yeah, that's the thing we were trying to fix. I think we were close, and it just wasn't quite working. So if the quality of the actual table and whatnot is not fantastic, then check your HD settings if you're on YouTube and Twitch. But otherwise, this is what we're working with on our home setup. Going back to Thorin II, though, he says +2 direct influence against the Blue Mountain Dwarves faction, +3 prowess against orcs, +2 direct influence against dwarves and dwarf factions. So the direct influence is essentially this against the Blue Mountain Dwarves faction. So let's pull up the Blue Mountain Dwarves faction. I want to see if they put that in the Palando deck. Not in that set. Another interesting thing about this game is you have what's called a sideboard. And so this is actually a stack of cards that you can get into your deck in various ways. And the Blue Mountain Dwarves are actually in the sideboard, recommended sideboard of this deck. So you'll see on the top left, it's got a 3, so it's worth 3 points. It's got that triangle, and that means that that's a symbol for factions. So any faction is going to have that triangle behind it. Again, at the end of the game, if you've scored a faction, your opponent hasn't, then you're going to get double the points. This card is also unique, playable at Blue Mountain Dwarf Hold. If the influence check is greater than 9, standard modifications, elves -2, dwarf +2. So basically, if you go to Blue Mountain Dwarf Hold and you have this card in your hand, you can attempt to play it. And you're going to have to make an influence check of 9 or greater. And this game revolves around 2d6s. So you just make a roll. This is a 4, which would be less than a 9. But a couple things happen, right? If a dwarf is making this test, it's a +2. So that would technically bump it up to a 6. And then Thorin gets +3 or +2 direct influence against it. So technically that would get up to an 8, which is close. He's very good at trying to score this card. And that's basically what he does. And then he's obviously better at fighting orcs. And that's about it. And one of the things that I am surprised at in this game, which is, that's interesting. David's saying he knows he's been watching all week, but just a bit more blurred today than the last few days. That's interesting. Is it just the table shot, or is it my table and my face doing that? And luckily the cards are apparently crystal clear. So the thing I'm impressed by in this game is that the characters actually tend to not be super complex. Like their abilities don't, it's not like super crazy, but some of the cards do get crazy. So you have Thorin. We also have Keeley. And so Keeley is 3 mind and 0 direct influence. So he can't be directly influenced by Thorin. He's unique. He has +1 prowess against orcs. So this whole deck's good against orcs. -1 to his corruption checks, -1 to his influence checks against factions. So he's not great at influencing people. He's got a 3/8 stat, and that's really about it. We also get Dory. Dory is only 1 influence, so he technically could be directly influenced by Thorin to not count against your 20 total. He's unique. He's good against orcs. He's not good against corruption checks, and he's not good against factions. We also have Gloin. Like I said, this is a dwarf kind of time. Obsidian saying, it's your table in your face. The reason it is my table in my face is because that video feed's coming from my home, whereas the cards are actually coming from the technology we use at the office to pop those cards in. So it makes sense that those are in HD. Gloin, looking at him, he costs 5 and he has 2 direct influence, so he can technically influence there. And it's also important to note, going back to Thorin really quick, he has +2 direct influence against dwarves and dwarf factions. So his 2 stat actually becomes a 4 against other dwarfs. So he can technically have anybody at this point except Gloin under his influence, basically. And Gloin gets +2 direct influence against Blue Mountain Dwarves faction. So if they were both together trying to do that, they're really good at convincing them to do what they want to do, and it just makes sense. +1 prowess against orcs and +1 direct influence against dwarves and dwarf factions. So he is also a 3, which means he can essentially control someone. And I also get Oin, OIN, for those at home counting. He's 3 mind, 0 direct influence, +1 prowess against orcs, -1 to corruption checks. So assumedly what's going to happen is, because Thorin gets +2 direct influence against dwarves, he can basically be influencing Keeley and Dory, because he's a total of 4, and their combined mind is a 4. And then Gloin also has +2 against, or +1 against dwarves, so he can actually directly influence Oin. And so you only get to start with 20 in play, but because as soon as it starts, if these are the groups that I'm in, I have Thorin and Gloin's total is 13. So I actually have 7 open mind to be capable of playing other characters, which we'll get to in a minute. You also get to start the game with 2 minor items. And so the pre-built challenge deck gives me 2 copies of Cram. So Cram is a minor item, so it would be attached to someone. You can discard it to untap the bearer. So if the bearer gets exhausted, obviously you can unexhaust it. Alternatively, discard during the organization phase to allow its bearer's company to play an additional region card, which we won't get into. And so I'm just going to read real quick this strategy of this deck so that I know what's going on. And then we'll actually just walk through a turn. And that's the quickest way for me to teach how this game's going to go. So stick with me and we'll get there. So this is deck C, the Dwarven Quest. With the prompting of Palando, Thorin II leads a company of dwarves into the dragon lairs and shadow holds east of the Misty Mountains in a quest for their people. The dwarves operate with a good mix of fighting enhancement and attack avoidance. The hazards are animals and wolves, which we won't deal with. Thorin controls Keeley and Dory. Nailed it. And Gloin controls Oin. Thorin and Oin each have crayon. So we'll go ahead and attach those. And it makes sense to me. I'm going to have Thor represent Thorin on the map. And I'm going to have Captain America as Gloin. And they're both going to start at a haven, which we'll get to in a minute. It says suggested sites for resources. It tells me like literally a specific site to play specific cards, which I'll reference throughout the game. Resource play. This deck is loaded with items giving strong tactical advantages in play. Corruption is a natural danger when playing a large number of items, so take the time to play both fellowships. In a deck using one large company, resources that allow multiple marshalling point sources to be played in one turn are needed for speed. This deck has 3. Bounty of the Horde, which is a card. I'll let Bryce pop that. I'm not going to read it yet, but you can read it on the screen. The second one is Lucky Search. And then the final one is Thor's Map. Thor's Map. I recently got Invisalign, and that word is hilarious to say with Invisalign. And side note, Thor. All right, and then it says, take special care to use these to their full advantage. Thor's Map is the most powerful of the bunch, so never discard it. Ooh, never is a strong word. Note that Lucky Search can only be played at Deb Marsh's Goblin Gate, Moria, or Sarn Gorywing, not at the Dragon's Lair. This deck can fight creatures for marshalling points or cancel the overwhelming threats. After the first few risky turns, the Dwarven company should be in a comfortable position to win attacked. And then it says Palando. Palando should move to Lorien and form a company there from the play deck. So he wants to go to Lorien and I want to play cards to him. This company is responsible for playing the 2 allies in the Book of Mazarbul, if not played with the dwarves on an early turn otherwise. If not played with the dwarves on an early turn. So if I can't get the book out, then that's the plan. Otherwise, Palando should not move unless you can properly protect him with tactical options from your hand. After playing Quick Beam, another card, relocate Palando's company to Rivendell. Tap Palando to bring the Blue Mountain Dwarves into the play deck. So this is one of the things you can do. You can tap your wizard on your turn to put 1 card from your sideboard and shuffle it into your deck, or you can take 5 cards from your sideboard, put them in your discard pile, and if you're playing like a 2-deck game, it would shuffle back in. Let me find where I was at. Tap Palando, bring it in. His company should be in a convenient position to move to the Blue Mountain Dwarfhold to store the Book of Mazarbul and play this faction. Hazard play, which will skip. Sideboarding, which will skip because that's not going to be super relevant. And that is the deck. Okay, let me look at my screen so I can get situated here. So I'm going to play. Move this. Slide this a little bit. And I'm going to put gotta do this backwards. All right, so I believe, let me see. I think my characters start at a haven, which will probably be like Lorien. Where is it at? If anyone knows out there at home, let me know. Where does my company start? I think they just start at a haven. So they're both going to be here at Lorien. Jason asking, why is the video fuzzy? Because we're streaming from home, got iced in, and we're working on some limited technological capacity. We were trying to come up with a solution that would work, but just couldn't quite get it to work on the devices that were available to us. What up, Chris? Welcome. David says, I thought, but I'm not a pro. Also, we're looking at Palando. He's my wizard. He's actually going to be shuffled into my deck. He has 10 direct influence. So when your wizard comes in play, typically you get 10 extra influence to play characters with. And then he's a 6 prowess and a 9 body, and he's unique. His controlling player, and this is the one card, a unique card you can play more than one copy of in your deck, technically. His controlling player may keep one more card than normal in his hand. Opponent must discard his cards face up. So his hand size is essentially increased by 1. Now, a few things just to break down we'll walk through a turn, and it's going to be interesting because I'm playing the open world solo mode, which I'll link to in a second for those that are interested, which is reminiscent of a standard game, but normally I would have all my hazards and stuff in my deck, which I don't currently have. So this is just the like free people side of the stack. Let me grab that. I'm going to paste this in chat. Which kind of breaks it down. And typically you'd start with an 8-card hand, but in the open world solo mode, I only do 5 to represent the fact that a chunk of my deck would normally be those hazards that aren't there. So if you had an 8-card free people's hand, it would be way too consistent and too good. So I'm gonna go ahead and draw up to 5. A lot of these cards are totally new to me, so that'll be interesting. And so kind of walking through the turn structure, right? So the first thing you do is you untap. Any character you have in play can untap. If they're 90 degrees, I think that's 90 degrees sideways, they're tapped. If they're 180 degrees, they're actually wounded. And so when they untap, they only go 1 level, which is worth knowing. And technically going from wounded to not is called healing. Okay, so untap phase, none of my characters are tapped, so it won't matter. Organization phase, during the organization phase, you can do a couple of things. You can play a character, which I'm looking at my hand. I do have a few characters, which the first one is Gildor. And it's important to note, if you look in the bottom right of his card, it says home site Rivendell. So characters can essentially come into play in a few ways. 1, you can play them at their home site. 2, if your wizard is out, you can only play them at their home site or at a haven that wizard is located at. So once you play your wizard, the downside is your characters get harder to bring into play, especially if you're playing a wizard that kind of goes out and about and makes things happen. And then I do believe, and it's worth noting, Ryan Rope, you're totally right on this, they only go from wounded to tapped if they're at a haven. So once they become wounded out in the middle of nowhere, you have to actually get back to a haven in order to untap them from that stance or play a card that does. See Obsidian, good to see your name. Then I also have Boromir, if you've ever heard of him. He's 1 point, 4 mind, 1 direct influence, +2 influence against the men of Anorian faction, -1 to all his corruption checks, which makes a certain amount of sense. Reading some comments here. So before my wizard comes into play, though, can I still play characters at Haven, or is it only their home site? And I'm just going to read through some of these cards while I'm waiting on that. So I did draw a copy of Thor's map. Unique, discard Thor's map to untap a site with a dragon automatic attack. I drew the Great Road. Playable at the end of the organization phase on a company at a haven. Opponent may draw up to twice the normal cards from their company during the movement hazard phase. At the end of the turn, the company may replace its site card. Hold on. Okay, so opponent may draw up to twice the normal number of cards for the company during this movement hazard phase. So they get twice the cards. But then after that turn's over, the company you played it on can replace the site card it's at With the Haven, it started at. So basically, it's to go back for free, but your opponent gets twice as many cards. Ryan Roper confirming it's the Haven or their home site. And then finally, I get Marvel's Told. This is the card I hear a lot about. Ritual, tap a Sage to force the discard of a hazard, non-environment, permanent event, or long event. Sage makes a corruption check modified by -2. So it's essentially a card that can get rid of these permanent or long events. Going back to the turn structure, I can play a character. I don't know. I kind of want to get stuff out of my hand so that I can keep drawing. But it's worth noting I have 7 direct influence open. So I want to be careful not to use up too much of my influence in case I draw a character I really want. But I do think I'm going to play Gildor. And he's going to end up joining the company with Gloin. Because that'll just give them an extra character. 3 seems safer than 2 for reasons that we'll get to in a second. And you can only play 1 character a turn, which again, in weird ways, this game created restrictions to keep things less crazy. But there are a lot of nooks and crannies of the rules which are interesting to find. Then you decide to move where to move for each company by putting new locations face down next to the current location, or announcing you're moving a company to a location already on the board. So another cool thing about this game, I have a big fat stack of locations that I can go to. There are all these locations around. But I'm actually going to reference every time you move. This is one thing I didn't appreciate as much up front. Every time you move, you're triggering both you and your opponent to draw cards. And so given that the game's timer is you going through your entire deck, the more you're moving, the faster the game's going to go. And the same goes for your opponent, and the faster they're going to see the cards that they're interested in seeing. Let's see what it told me to do early. Play items. Play items and fight. That's what it told me to do, but I don't have items. So I want both my companies to move so I can trigger draws. It said Lucky Search is only playable Dead Martians, Goblin Gate, Moria. So let's see how far away these places are. Dead Marshes is not super far. Basically, if I draw Lucky Search and some items, I want to make sure I'm in that vicinity. Moria. Moria sounds fun. Nothing bad could go wrong there, right? It's close. I don't think I want to go to Moria though until it's time. That's like a very terrifying place. I'm gonna move. Any recommendations in chat on where I should move my companies? Broly, I'm using the standard rules. So my movement is going to be normal movement. Because I kind of also want to just see enemies that I can punch. Score some points. Ryan Roper, what are some locations close to where I'm at that would draw me a lot of cards? Jason Lang, would you like a trip to Moria? Sounds like a nice vacation to me. Nice and quiet, not a lot of people there. Okay, I'm just gonna look through the stack of cards, these locations, and see if I see any big threes. What are all the locations that could possibly draw me 3 cards? I don't want to go too crazy yet though, because wow. Pull up Barad-dûr. Barad-dûr. It actually lets your opponent draw 9. Wonkstown. I'm just looking for a friendly 2/2. Thankfully, Burr Widow, Buhr, is a 3/3. which I'll cover how that works in a second. Mm-hmm. All right, I'm just gonna find a nice 2/2. I mean, I could technically move to like Rivendell, which is a 2/2. But I kind of want to move somewhere that if I draw a minor item, I can play it. So let's look at, I have my map key here that shows me where all the minor item places are. So like Hermit's Hill, is Hermit's Hill a 2 or a 1? It's a 1/1, not ideal. Let's see. Aemon Hin. Is a 1/1. I feel like all these minor item places that are anywhere near are going to be 1/1s. What about Dead Marshes? Three, 2. I don't like that 3. Ryan Ober saying Aemon Lind. Let's see what that looks like. I don't think I have the card, so we won't be going there. Gomp saying many players travel from Grey Havens to Edelhund and back again. Where is Grey Havens? What direction is Grey Havens from where my characters are right now? I thought it was reasonably close. Ryan Roper saying Karn Dumb. It's a 3/2. It's way up there. Ryan Roper saying my character should start at Rivendell. Noted. We did it. Let's make Karn Dumb one of these. And we'll send Thor in there. And then let's see something like the Barrow Downs. Let's see if that is any kind of good for me. It's a 2/1, not ideal. Tharbad. It's a 1/1. What's that one? Ost and Edel. I've been there before. I feel like it would be so rewarding to get good at the the math here, or not the math, the map, and like knowing where you're going. So I'm gonna go Ost here to not be too crazy with my life. Raul Santa, the Nazgul and the Hazard deck, Karn Doom could be fun. There are Nazgul in the Hazard decks, so we'll work out how that's going to go in just a second. So we're still in the organization phase. I decided where they're going. I can pass items. I'm not going to do that. I can store items, which I also can't do yet. Then we have the long event phase. So remove any long events that I've played. I can play new ones, and long events basically last from now until we get back to this phase on my next turn. Then we go to the movement phase. So one at a time, you actually move your companies. And this is where the game actually happens. So the first thing we're going to do is move Thorin from Rivendell to Karn Dumb. So, and we're basically using region movement. So on this map, I have Rudar here, and that's a region. And I'll move from Rudar to Angmar to Karn Doom, which is in Angmar. And I'm essentially building a site path. So I started in Rudar. It's a wilderness. And then Angmar is not a wilderness. It is, I gotta look up my icons here, a Shadowlands. And then Karn Doom is a Darkhold. Sounds exciting. So it's literally wilderness, and I have these little nice hand-drawn icons on here. Then we're gonna grab this one. which is the Shadowlands. And then Darkhold, who convinced me to go here? I'm looking at you, Roper. Darkhold here. And so the way I do this in the open world solo mode is a couple things. I built a deck here for each of these icon types, which I'll be playing and shuffling up. And they're definitely Nazgul about. So buyer beware. And I'm going to shuffle these. But essentially, when I'm moving, I'm going to make a test for the site path, right? And so there's a thing called the hazard limit. When you're playing against an opponent, they can only play a number of hazards equal to the size of your company. So in this case, I have 3. So the max number of bad cards I can see here is 3. And so I'll make a test for each thing in the site path. And for every test I fail, I will actually draw a card from that stage of the site path. So the first thing is Wilderness, and I'm going to roll some dice and show you how this works. Any test. So 7 or more is a success. And I rolled an 11. But what I do to basically emulate the fact that I'm playing against another person is I modify this negatively by the number of cards my opponent would have drawn. So if we look at Carndom, bottom left, there's a 2, which is the number of cards I get to draw. So I'm actually going to go ahead and draw my 2 cards. Okay. And then my opponent is the other side of that equation, which is a 3. So they would get to draw 3 cards. So I actually take this 11, I subtract 3, and that's the actual roll that I got for that test, which was 11 minus 3 is an 8, which is 7 or greater. So I do not get an encounter card for the Wilderness. Then after the Wilderness, we have the Shadowlands. So I'll roll again. This time I got a 7. 7 minus 3 is 4. It does not pass my test. So I will actually go ahead and get the top card of that deck, which is called Seized by Terror. Playable on a non-wizard character moving in a Shadowland or a Dark Domain. That's me. Target character makes a roll and adds his mind stat. If the result is less than 12, that character splits off into a different company. This new company immediately returns to his original company's site of origin. So interesting. So I'm going to make a roll and I'm going to add the mind. So it's kind of a risk reward scenario, right? If I roll with Thorin, he's an 8. So I only need a 4 to have him keep hanging out with me here. But if I roll less than a 4, he actually is a separate company and goes home, which means that Dory and Keeley are by themselves. And also, because they're not with him anymore, they're not being directly influenced. So they're going to actually count against my total influence being consumed right now, which I think would put me over the limit. 8 plus 4 is 12, 20. It would. So I really need to not fail this test. Particularly with Thorin. Either way, I'm going to be over my mind limit. I'm going to lose a character if I fail this test. So I am going to go ahead and test with Thorin and push my luck and hope it doesn't go horribly. I failed. This is going to go very poorly very quickly. So Thorin, let me make sure there's not something in my hand that can stop this from happening. Nope. 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 Okay. So I failed. And so these become 2 separate companies. We'll bring in Loki here is going to represent Keeley and Dory. Thor runs home scared to Rivendell. And then I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I essentially am at 5. This is controlled 9 plus 8, 17. I'm at 21 total mind that I need right now. So I think I have to lose 1. Is that correct? And if I lose 1, do I get to pick? Because if I do, it's going to be Dory. No offense to old Dory. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other test. Ryan Roper saying you only check mine at the end of the organization phase, I think. However, I'm in the movement phase, so I would be fine for now. And I have basically next turn to come up with a solution that makes this better for me, which we'll see. Okay, so that card happens. And then I'm going to test again. So -3, because that's the number of cards that get drawn. I got a 6. -3 is the 3. So I will get a dark holds card. And we get Ren the Unclean. This is a Nazgul, speak of the devil. Unique Nazgul 8th may be played as a hazard creature with 1 strike or a permanent event. As a creature may be played keyed to Daggerland. Where am I headed here? To Karn. Athelion, Gorgoroth, and Horse Plains. And we're in Angmar. So he cannot be played as a creature, but he can be played as a permanent event. Remains in play until tapped during the opponent's movement hazard phase. When tapped, Ren the Unclean becomes a short event. Each character in play must make a corruption check. So I'm going to put Ren in play. And basically the way I'm playing this in the open world solo mode is he's just going to stay in play until he's useful, and then it'll trigger and it'll work. Gum says, good luck. Thanks. Okay, so they get there successfully. And then I actually go to the next company before I resolve actually getting there, I believe. Let me reference my compendium up here. So the steps of the movement phase are reveal the new site card and move to the location. If it's a non-hazard, draw cards based on it, etc. Opponent plays hazards one at a time, key to the site path, which is what we just did. Once all hazards are played and resolved, remove the previous site if there are no characters in play at that site and return it to your site deck. If the previous site was untapped, you discard it. Both players draw up to 8, so that's when you actually draw. That's not true. Oh, it's after the movement hazard phase. Okay, yeah. All right, so one at a time for each company. And the next phase is the site phase. Oh, wait a second. People, that's right. I actually didn't fail Seized by Terror because I rolled like a 5 or a 6. I was still trying to test a 7, but I only needed a 4 to not do it. What up, Samuel Slager says, wow, just joining. I love that map. Yeah, this is half of the appeal of the game. So we're going to put Loki back away, and Thor is still representing for me up in Karndin. That's going to be way better. That would have been really tough to recover from. So they make it, and you don't actually deal with the site till the site phase, which is after this. So then my other company is going to Ost in Edel from Rivendell. So again, it's Rudar, which is a wilderness, Holland, which is a wilderness, and then Ost, which is a ruins and lair. It's a 1 draw. So technically, at the end of that movement, I have to discard down. And I'm going to actually, that's a card I could maybe play. So let's discard here. And then I'm still at 5 cards. But now I get to draw a card from Ost because it's a 1. All right, now we got some gear cooking. And then we do the hazard. So it's wilderness, ruins and lairs. And it's only a -1 because the draw on this for my opponent would be a 1. Ryan Roper saying, I'm not sure where the lesson 4 comes from. So if you look at Seized by Terror, target character makes a roll and adds his mind. So Thorin has an 8. If the result is less than 12, that character splits off into a different company. So I rolled like a 4, a 5, or a 6, plus my 8 mind gets me at 12 or higher. So first is a wilderness, and so I'm -1, so I need an 8 not to take a card. I got a 7, so I will take a wilderness card. This is called Lost in the Wilderness, playable on a company that is moving this turn. You can play an additional hazard on target company for each wilderness in its site path. So there's 2 wilderness in the site path. Typically, my hazard limit would be 3. Now my hazard limit is a 5 because of this card, which means I was only going to have to take 3 tests. But now I'm actually going to take 5 total tests because that card came out and was played. So the second one was Naturally a Wilderness, which I passed. The third one is a Ruins and Lairs, which I passed. And then I basically get 2 more checks. So I'm going to do 1 Wilderness and 1 Ruins and Lairs, which I passed that one with a 9. And then Ruins and Lairs got an 8, which also passes. So thankfully, that didn't get really terribly bad for me. And I'm actually just going to put these backwards under so that I know if I get to that point, I'll shuffle. So they arrive, and then we get to the site phase. So once you make it to the site phase successfully, you can actually do what's called entering the site. And if you do that, like if we look at Ost and Edel, OST-IN, Bryce, it's got this automatic attack section. It says wolves, 3 strikes with 5 prowess. So I basically, to enter this location, I'm going to take 3 strikes. And if I succeed at those things, I can actually interact with the site. And actually, I don't have to succeed. I just have to take those hits, and then I'm at that location. Rauli saying Karn Dune is a dark hold, so you could have had Ren the Unclean actually attack Thorn's company. Let me make sure. It doesn't say that he can be played there. It says as a creature may be played. Oh, also. Oh, because he's just keen. Okay, so pull up Ren the Unclean. This is good. This is good to see. On the left of his card, you'll see 2 icons. One is that circle where like a castle in it. That's a dark domains. The other one is dark holds, which is that other symbol, and that is actually the symbol that Karn Doom has. So I'm actually going to have to take this hazard with this company, and I'll play it. In the solo mode, I'm basically playing it as though it's the worst thing that could happen to me. And I think a Nazgul attack is probably about as good as it gets. So if we look at Ren the Unclean, well, this will be a good chance for us to see how this resolves. He's got a 15-10, which means he's 15 prowess and 10 body, very hard to actually damage. And the way it's going to work is he gets 1 strike. It says maybe played as a creature with 1 strike. So he gets to do one strike of 15 at one of my characters. And I basically have to choose someone to block. So in this case, looking at it, let me look at this. I want to read body check. So if you're hit by a strike, so if this 15 does hit something, I roll 2d6. And if the value is greater than my body stat, my character is eliminated. So if we look at Keeley, he has a body of 8. Ren, who's likely to hit him, I would then roll 2d6. And if I roll a 9 or higher, he actually is going to get eliminated. So I'm going to try to block this with Keeley. And when you block with a character a strike, if you don't tap them to block, you actually suffer a -3 penalty to your prowess stat. So I'm going to go ahead. Honestly, well, it's likely I'm going to become hit anyway. I don't even know if I tap because even at a -3, I'm a 0. I'm unlikely to get past his 15 anyway. I guess I'll go ahead and tap. So I'm just at a 3. And I get to roll 2d6. So it's my 3 against his 15. I rolled a 4, so I fail. So I'm going to be hit, I believe. So I'm hit. I roll 2d6. This is for my hit check, which is a 4. And it says if the value is greater than my body stat, I'm eliminated. If wounded characters that are hit apply +1 to the roll. If the value is less than my body stat, my character remains in play. So my body stat was an 8, which means that I rolled under that and I will stay in play. If a tie, character remains in play. And I believe if I'm hit, I just go straight to wounded, right? Is that correct? Gomp saying use Keeley instead, or use Dory instead. I'll do that as I'll use Dory. It would have been the same difference. So Dory is wounded, but he did not get removed from play. And then Ren the Unclean actually just resolves. So he's going to go to the discard pile. Now, if I'd actually beaten his strike, so if I rolled more than his attack up front, and then I also beat his body check, I would actually defeat him and get to score his points. And if you look at him, he's worth 5, Ridden the Unclean. So he's really terrifying, but at the same time, if your opponent is able to defeat them, they can score a lot of points. That makes sense. Gomp saying Keely's worth a point, whereas Dory is not. Okay, so then we're actually going to go to the site phase, and I need to look at the cards in my hand. I did draw some items. So as an example, I drew Worm's Bane. And in the middle of it, you'll see, one, it's worth 4 points up top. But middle right, it's a greater item. And if we look at something like Austin Edel, it says playable items, minor and gold ring. And if we look at Karn Dum, it's items minor, major, and greater. So I can actually play potentially Worm's Bane. I also do Thor's Map, which my deck told me I wanted to get in play, and I can actually play that at Austin Edel. So we'll start there, and we'll see what we get. All right, so I enter the site. There's 3 wolf strikes. I have 3 characters, and essentially you have to divide them evenly. And any excess strikes you can apply as negative modifiers, -1, to certain attacks if you're playing against someone. So in this case, they all get 1. It's a wolf strike with a 5. And so also worth noting, to play a item, you have to tap the site and you have to tap the character that is playing it. So you really don't want to have the character tapped who's going to be playing this this item. So in other words, I'm going to take some risks. So it's a 5 prowess attack. I'm going to start with Gildor. He's a 5 if I tap. If I don't tap, he's going to be -3, so he's a 2, so I will not tap. I'm a 2. Prowess of 5 is what I'm hitting against. So I need a 3 or better to not get wounded. And I got a 9, so I succeed against that attack. Then we're going to go to Oin, and he's actually going to go ahead and tap to be a 3, because I don't think I'm going to try to play an item with him. 3 + 2 is 5, so he actually technically succeeds, but only just barely. Then Gloin, I won't tap. He's a 5, -3 is a 2. I need to get to 5, so I just basically need a 3. There's only one way to fail, which is what I just rolled before this, so that's a little terrifying, but I succeed. So I succeed against the strikes, which means I'm at that location, and now I get a couple options. First is, let me go back to my site phase chart. The auto attacks trigger and resolve, and if successfully entered, which it was, you can tap a character and the location to play a specified item type. So I'm going to tap Austin Needle, and we're going to play Thor's Map on Gloin. Now you got to be careful. If we look at Thor's Map, there's a couple things going on. One, it's unique. You can discard it to untap a site with a dragon automatic attack. So I've tapped Ost here, which means when I leave it, it's going to get discarded. Thor's Map is going to let me untap a site with a dragon automatic attack, so I can just stay there and potentially get another item from it. Or actually, I would discard and get 2 on the same turn, which would be really, really powerful. But on the bottom right is a 1. This is the corruption stat. And so essentially the risk with the dwarves is that they like to have a lot of items and stuff. But sort of like that when you're watching Lord of the Rings, the way the ring kind of just corrupts people over time. The more possessions each character has, the higher the corruption stat. And so if you have to make a corruption check, which there are a fair number of hazard cards that are going to make you do that, you can actually just lose your character outright if you fail a corruption check, because you just kind of go mad and people, kick you out of the company. So either way, I played Thor's Map. And then I believe, let me see, you can tap a second character to play a minor item, which I just played 1. So I don't have any. So that'll be the end of that site phase. Then we're going to go to Thorin. This is 4 strikes with 7 prowess. So it's stronger. Plus, I only have 2 ready characters. So let me go to combat. When strikes are generated, the defender chooses where to assign hits. So I get to pick, and I do it evenly, actually, and can only assign 1 per character. Can't assign to tapped characters. So I have 4 strikes coming and only 2 characters to assign them to. So there's going to be 2 bonus strikes. Reading through. So basically, each attack is going to be at a -1 for me. which is bad. So let's see what happens. Well, these are orcs. Oh, and I'm really good against orcs. Don't you forget it. Thorin says +3 prowess against orcs. So he's an 8 prowess against these orc automatic strikes. And Keeley is +1 prowess against orcs. So he's a 4. And I basically need to have one untapped character here. Because I can't play that. So that's awesome. It's a great card. Let's go. I'm going to go Keeley first. He's at +1 because it's an orc. So he's at 4 to 7. He's down by 3. And if I don't tap, he's going to be -3, which I don't want. So Keeley is going to tap. So he's a 3 minus the 1 because there was an extra strike against him, which is 2. Testing against the 7. I got a 5. So I actually succeed against that, just barely. Thorin, on the other hand, is an 8. If he doesn't tap, he's still going to be a 5 against a 7. So there's literally no way for him to fail. So I'll just not tap. I rolled 5. He's fine. I have successfully entered that site. Then I will tap Thorin and Carndom to play a Worm's Bane. This thing is awesome. Look at this. Unique weapon, +2 prowess to a maximum of 9, or +4 prowess, again, to a maximum of 12, and -2 to strike's body against a dragon or a drake. So it makes him really good at fighting dragons, or pretty good, because it gives you minus to the body. Oh, actually, it's really just amazing, because it gives them -2 body, which is great. So I will play Wormsbane on Thorin, which is going to score me 4 points and make him really awesome. And then we get to the end of the site phase. And then we go to end of turn. The active player may discard a card and then draw back up. So I'm at 4. Technically, I could discard a card, which I will. And then I can draw back up to 5. And then we go back to the beginning of the turn. So first things first, Michael in chat saying Wormsbane is broken. Ryan saying defender assigns strikes to untapped characters, attacker assigns to tapped wounded characters, and XX strikes get applied by attacker as a -1. Oh, I see it. I see. So technically, instead of being -1, Dory just takes a strike. And if he's already tapped, what kind of modifier does he face? Let me look. I probably have that. Already tapped is -1. So he's against a 7. His prowess is normally a 3, -1 is a 2, needs a 5, got a 7. So he's going to be fine. So basically, there were 4 strikes. I get a pick to assign to untapped characters, which was Keeley and Thorin. And then my opponent gets to pick to assign any leftover strikes to my tapped characters, and there was 2. So 1 would go to Dory, and there'd be 1 bonus strike. So then you get a -1 to one of those 3 hits. Ryan's saying wounded is -2. Okay, that's good to know. This game, the mental gymnastics of all the little rules. It's amazing how delicate they were with everything. Okay, so then we go to the first of the phase, which is untap. So everything's going to untap. I'm not at a haven, so Dory is going to stay wounded. And that was a pretty stellar exchange for me. I did draw the Book of Mazarbul, unique, only playable at Moria, may be stored at a dwarf hold for 5 marshalling points. So you look in the top corner of this, it's a 1 with a 5 in parentheses. So, Ryan's saying wounded is actually a -1. So I was correct. Nope. Raul is saying -2. Who knows? Chris saying, Zach, do you factor in company size when you determine how many hazards to face during the movement hazard? Yeah, I outlined that on that blog I linked earlier. I'll send it again here. Which is, I basically do, I do factor it, but the hazard limit still counts. So if I get 3 hazards in a 3-size company, I stop no matter where I'm at. And then I basically draw for everything along the site path. So the site path is short, like 2, I only take 2 tests. But if it's like 6, I would take tests until I hit my hazard limit or tested for everything I went through. So back to the Book of Mazarbul, only play with Moria. if it's stored, that 1 with a 5 in parentheses, the 5 is only what you score if you store it somewhere, which we'll talk about later. If it's buried as a sage, you can tap it during the organization phase to increase your hand size by 1 until your next untap phase. So you can kind of see between this and Palando, 2 extra cards around would be a significant advantage, which is probably just how he plays the game, which is awesome. So I want to play that, and that's a special item. So I'm going to reference my... Oh yeah, it's special because I can only play it at Moria. And this company here is pretty close. So why not? Let's dive too deep, shall we? Let me go find that Moria card. Hopefully I have it. There it is. Oh, look at the art on Moria, dude. Are we seeing this? Amazing. So when I'm playing solo, I'll just put it here. And they're basically going from here to Moria. And then I'm actually going to take this company back to Rivendell because I want to heal Dory, and hopefully it doesn't go super bad for me. Now, here's a question for those that hopefully know better than me. If I'm starting out at Karn Doom, does my site path include that location icon, or does it start with the region that I'm at, which is Angmar at this point? Okay. I'm going to resolve the other one first. And then we will go from there. Ryan Roper saying, not the location, just the region. Raul is saying, come on, Balrog of Moria Hazard, come on out. Yeah, I do think he's in there, which is terrifying. That's not something that the dwarf signed up for necessarily. Okay, so let's go ahead and move to the Haven first. So we're going to be going from Shadowlands, is that right? Yep, Shadowlands to Wilderness to a Haven. And the card draw on this is a 2. So I'll be at a -2, and I'll also get to draw 2. Let me see. Wow, that's awesome. Playing these challenge decks is really cool because there's a lot going on in this game. So to build a deck that's decent, I think takes a good amount of understanding. And I know a lot of people have recommendations for how to tweak these challenge decks, but just being able to grab a stack of cards and play is super valuable. IMO. So let's go ahead and test. I'm at -2 because of the draw that my opponent otherwise would have. So I need to get a 9 to not take a card. I got a 9. Okay, then the other one is Wilderness. A 7, so I'll fail that. I'll get a Wilderness card. Raul is saying you only use Haven draws for Haven to Haven moves. Preston saying, do you include site-specific creatures like Balrog in solo hazard decks? So I think I have a, let me look at it. So I don't think I've addressed that yet. I have a stack of unique things that, because you can't, if we look at Moria, it's got the Shadow Holds icon, and you don't want a Balrog showing up in the Shadow Holds deck because it can't be played at all the Shadow Holds. So I haven't really addressed that yet. But I think what I'll end up doing is creating a kind of an Underdeep / Moria deck that has that in it, and one for like Shelob and that kind of stuff. Gomp saying from normal site to Haven, use the draw on the normal site. So the draw on the normal site was 2 still. So that's fine. So I failed on the Wilderness check, so we'll get a Wilderness thing. It's a river. If the company that has moved to the site this turn does not tap a ranger, it must do nothing during its site phase. That's rather convenient. Do I have a ranger? I don't, but I just can't do anything during my site phase, which is actually totally fine. Raoul saying, good to know I still recall stuff after 26 years of playing Middle-earth CCG. Have you been playing the whole time, or are you saying 26 years since you've played? So they're going to get to Rivendell, and when they do, I'm actually going to discard Karn Dune because I exhausted it. So I actually can't go back there and get sites until I shuffle through my deck again. They're at Rivendell. Then these cats are going to be going to Moria. So they're not going very far. They're going to Wilderness. Wilderness, Redhorn Gate is also a Wilderness into Moria. So Wilderness, and then whatever Moria is. Moria has a draw of 2, and I think I'm over at this point. Draw of 2. So, and draw of 3 for the opponent. So I'm actually at -3, and we'll go Wilderness first. At an 8, -3, I fail. Lesser Spiders, going to play and get resolved. Spiders, 4 strikes at a 7. And that is going to be interesting. We're going to take some risk here and see what happens. The deck told me it was going to be a little bit of a risk. So Oin, I'm going to not tap, so he's going to be -3. It's a 0 versus a 7. Got a 5. So I failed. Now I'll make a body check. Got a 7, so that's less than his 8, so he'll be fine-ish, but he's wounded. Gildor is going to make 5 - 3 is 2. 2 against a 7. Passed. Gloin is a 5 - 3 is a 2 against a 7. He will fail and make a body check, which I passed. So Gloin will also be hurt. And then the spiders were not defeated, so they'll go. And that was just my first hazard check. So this could get feisty real quick. Second one. 7 - 3 failed. Let's see what we get. Wolves with 2 strikes. This is going to be bad. Yeah, I should have assigned the -1 somewhere, which probably would have been on Gloin. So he got hit either way. Warg's 2 strikes. So 1 is going to go on Gilder, and he's just going to take it against a 9 minus. He's a 2. I need a 7. Got a 6. He's going to be hurt. Make a body check. He's fine-ish. This is a beat up company. And then there's literally 2 other strike or 1 other strike. So we'll go on Gloin. He's at a minus. Did we say -1 or -2 for a wounded character? I'm going to go with -1 for now. So he's a 5 -1, 4 to a 9. He succeeded. And that'll be the wargs are gone. I didn't defeat them, so they're just discarded. And then we'll make the final test to see if I arrive at Moria. 6. Failed, but I'll draw a card, basically. Looks like that is the Shadow Holds. Ryan saying -3 standing, -2 wounded, -1 tap. That makes sense. David Vedral saying, when I play solo, I tend to have a dude eliminated about every 4 or 5 moves. Is that normal? I mean, I think if you're doing anything, you're going to be taking some damage occasionally. Motor City saying, oh man, I can't believe I'm watching this live. I still have not played this game yet. I bought so much stuff after watching your first videos. That's awesome. Yeah, I went in pretty deep as well. I'm super excited for this pandemic to be over. a lot of people that I want to play against. All right, we get a Barrow White. Undead, 1 strike. After the attack, each character wounded by Barrow Whites makes a corruption check modified by -2. It's going to be a quick game, I have a feeling, and not in my favor. So I think the worst thing for me is against Gloin. So we'll do a 12 attack against Gloin's 3. That's 11, not quite. So he's going to make a body check. And he passes it barely. But then he has to make a corruption check. So let's go to my corruption check stack. If you're required to make a corruption check, your corruption points start at 0, but I have 2 items, so it's 2. Items will have a corruption value. Roll 2d6. Let's see. 8. If the result is greater than your corruption points, nothing happens. So my corruption points is 2. I rolled more than that. If it would equal 2 or 1 under my corruption points, I would discard the character. Raoul is saying +1 to body checks if wounded. Is that true? Because if so, Gloin's out of here. +1 to the roll. Yeah. All right. So Gloin gets aced. He's gone for good. Okay. So my quest into Moria with these guys went very poorly, like horrendously poorly. That's actually probably the most heat that my hazard decks have brought in a single jaunt. Oh, I can redistribute 1 item apparently. But now I know how dangerous. Go Thor's map. Ryan Rober saying Moria might be too dangerous to venture in unprepared. Oh, Scott saying items can only be transferred to non-wounded members of the party. So none of those here. Okay. So there at Moria, we're going to go to the site phase. This company can't do anything because of the hazard it got. This company also can't do anything because no one's untapped. So we'll go to the end of the site phase. Technically, I can discard, draw back up. Let me see. I'm at 4, 7, 8, 15. I have 5 open. I will spread that and draw 1. All right. So, I mean, I think the play, I can actually, when I untap, because I'm at a haven, he can go to just tapped, I believe. Let's look. Yep. Okay. So he heals. I think here's a question for people. If I guess you know what I should do. I'm going to move these guys to Rivendell. That's going to be my movement. These guys are going to stay put. So moving to Rivendell, because I'm going to a haven, I draw based on this. So I'll draw 2. Okay, that's good. And then I'm a -3 on these hazard tests because I'm going to a haven. So I use the draw of wherever I'm coming from. And so I'm going from wilderness into wilderness into wilderness into a haven. So 3 wilderness, I only have a company of 2. So my hazard limit is a 2. First one, -3. I pass, I roll the 12. Second one, a 9 -3, I will fail. So we'll get something. Worn and famished. Each non-wizard character that is not in a haven, freehold, or border hold does not untap normally during his untap phase. Such a character may instead make a roll, add in his mind stat. If the result is greater than 12, he untaps, cannot be duplicated. So that's a long event. It's going to stay in play till my next turn. Then my third test is another wilderness, which I passed. So I will not get another card. And they will arrive at Rivendell. So Moria is not going to be discarded because it was untapped. But now everybody is at Rivendell. And I will discard down to 5. Oh, that's true. Ryan Orber saying I should move them to Lorien because it'd be wilderness, Lorien, but it's fine. They made it. And then no site phase or anything. I'm going to go back to the start of the round. So we're going to untap. Dory will actually fully untap. This long event's still triggering. So I'm going to do mind test to try to discard this, I guess. Mind test to try to untap. So Gildor is a 4, and it says such a character may instead make a roll, adding his mind stat. If the result is greater than 12, he untaps. Let's go Gildor at +4, which got a 9 +4, so he does untap. Now, I think he would just heal and not completely untap. Oin is a 3 on the other hand. 3 +4, he fails. So that will not do anything good for me. Then we'll go to the organization phase, and a couple things are going to happen. First, I play my one character, which is going to be Palando, and he has 10 direct influence. So this is going to help me out tremendously because he can basically take all of this, and I am only taking up 8 influence currently. So I have 12 left, and he's also going to let me keep an extra card in my hand. And honestly, I want to wait and send a really nice sized company into Moria to try to go get this book of Mazerbull. So I'm just gonna not move at all. And do I take a hazard phase if I don't move? Oh, that's right. Worn and Famished only affects characters not at a haven. So technically, they were both on tap, and Worn and Famished is going to go away. Do I take hazards if I don't move? That's the real question here. Let me see if I can find it while I'm waiting. Does anyone chat know? It says you do, but you only take it to the site icon. What if it's a haven? I guess technically your opponent can play hazards that are non-site specific. Because if that's the case, I'll probably need to build a deck of generic things that can happen. Okay, yeah, I'll do that in the future. And then it's just if you pass your 7 or greater, you don't get a card. Nice. Okay, so I'll pass, go to the end of the round, draw back. I get to have an extra card now because of Palando. Then we go to the untap phase. So these are all going to ready. And now I get to look at what I want to do because I just drew the Haberek of Brightmail, which could be fun. I am going to go ahead and play Boromir. Ryan Rober saying there's about 30 seconds of lag between when you answer questions and you've seen our answers. I assume when you mean I asked the questions. Yeah, there's a little bit of a lag going on, which is normal. I played Boromir. Let me see, do I have a scout? Yep, that's Keeley. So that is going to be good. I see. I see exactly what I'm going to try to do. What is like Bounty of the Horde? It says playable during the site phase. One minor or major item may be played at a tap site that contains a horde. What's a horde? Meanwhile, I'm going to form a company and go to Moria. Palando is going to stay out of this. And I basically want to send my best without sending too much. And Moria is a bunch of orc attacks. So like Gildor is really good here. I think Boromir is really good here. I think this is kind of my company. Maybe I save Boromir. I think Boromir and Oin. Actually, you know what? Boromir and Dory is my one, so he can directly control that. And then Thorin is directly controlling, you know, one of these. So I'm at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 19 of 30. Okay, Scott's saying Bounty of the Horde is particularly powerful at Framsburg. Ryan Ober saying Dwarven Horde can also make a site a horde, which I don't have. But I'm going to go with Boromir and Dory, somewhere I can play a major item. So let me look. I think Barrow Downs. We'll try it. And we'll represent Boromir with the Captain America thing, and we'll represent Thorin with Thor still. So they're going to split up. We're going to go Moria here. And let me look at Barrow Downs before I commit to that. I feel like that has been that was a saucy location. Yeah, that's fine. So they're going to try to go to Barrow Downs. Just a little stealthy company. So let's go Boromir and Dory first to Barrow Downs. They're going to let me draw a card. It's a good card. And they're going to go from wilderness to Barrow Downs. And this, it was a draw 2, so it's a -2 on my checks. First is a wilderness, passed. Second is a wilderness, failed. They're going to get some wolves. There's 3 strikes, and it's an 8. So I have 2 characters. Let me look. I'm going to go ahead and tap Dory. And they're what? 3 strikes. So one of these is going to be -1. I'm going to put the -1 on Boromir. So Dory is going to be a 3 to 8. So I need a 5. Failed. So he's going to make a body check. Less than his body. So he's just going to be wounded. Boromir is not going to tap. So he's -3 because he's not tapping. Minus an extra 1 because of the extra attack that I'm not taking. So I'm a 2 to an 8. I need a 6. Definitely got it. I didn't defeat both strikes though, so I don't defeat the wolves. And then my third check is actually at Barrow Downs, which is a Runes and Lair. And I succeeded, so I actually don't get another one. So they'll actually arrive at Barrow Downs, and Rivendell is going to hang out over here. Then my other company has a four characters, so my hazard size is a little bigger. But we're going to go from wilderness to wilderness to wilderness to Moria, which is a shadow hold. So first, wilderness at I get 2 cards, and I can have 6 in my hand. So I get 2. Huh, that's awesome. Raul is saying, wait, where's Palando? He isn't moving. Yeah, he's literally just hanging. I guess he'll be Loki. That makes sense. He's at Rivendell. The deck told me to not move him. So I got this cool card called the Dwarves Are Upon You. Playable on a company containing dwarves facing an attack. All dwarves in the company receive +2 prowess and -1 body against the attack. Cannot be duplicated against a given attack. So if I was at Moria, would that apply to all of those strikes? That would be a good time to play that. So we're going to go wilderness, wilderness, wilderness location with a -3. Failed. So we're going to get Bert, in quotes, Bert. It says unique troll 1 strike. It played against after William or Tom, which is not. Ryan over saying all the strikes from a single attack. Okay, that would be a good time to do it. So I have to take this 12 somewhere. And is Bert, he's just a creature and he's a troll. And I know I have to face 4 strikes later. It's a 12, so the odds of me getting hit are high. I'm going to go ahead and just tap Oin and see if I can get a 9. Got a 7. So he's going to take a hit. We'll check, do his body check. I need an 8 or under. Got a 9. He's eliminated. He's out of here. And Bert succeeds. So Bert's going to go under. That was my first hazard. We're going to go second. I failed, so I get another wilderness. And my question is, if I lose a character there, is my hazard limit still 4 because I started with 4 characters, or is it now 3? Old Man Willow, awakened plant, 1 strike, 15 prowess against hobbits. May also be played key to Fanghorn, Heart of Mirkwood, etc., etc. So he's a 13. Yikes. Stays at 4. Okay. Helpful to know. $13. I suppose I'm going to tap Keeley. I'm hinting. It's a 3. I need a 10. Got a 9 to make a body check of 8 or less. He's fine. He's just wounded. That's my second. And technically, my hazard limit's a 4. So we'll get 1 more wilderness. Failed. Stormcrow. The direct influence of each wizard is reduced by 2 as permanent event. Discard all resource permanent events that have been played on each company with a wizard. No such cards may be played on each wizard company. So I'm just -2 direct influence. Raul is saying, looks like it's going to be Moria 2, Team Covenant 0. Quite possibly. 4th hazard, which is actually the location for Moria. And this is a Shadow Hold. I failed, so we will get a Shadow Hold card, which is the most terrifying option. Stirring Bones, undead, 2 strikes, 2 wilderness and sight path are required. It's a 9. And it's 2 strikes. So Gildor and Thorin are both going to get a strike here. And I won't tap. So Gildor is going to be a 2 to a 9. I need a 7. I got it. Thorin is +2 prowess because of his sword. So he's at 7, -3 is 4. So I need a 5. Got it. So I actually defeated both those strikes. I get a score Stirring Bones. So I'm going to put that up here behind Paladin. And then I make it to Moria. So I took all 4 hazards and they were all pretty brutal, which is great because some of the solo games I played, some of the hazards were kind of non-threatening, but they've definitely been hitting a lot. I did some tweaks after last time. So then we go to the site phase. Boromir is at Barrow Downs. There's an undead strike, 1 strike with 8 prowess. Let me see my... Oh, you know what? I'm a dummy. I had concealment in my hand, so I could tap a scout to cancel strikes. But I think I can do that with Thorin here against all the Moria strikes, right? Regardless, let's go Boromir first. So he's facing an 8. He's at a 6. I'm not going to tap, so he's going to be a 3. I need a 5. And I got a 5 on the nose, so I succeed against that attack. And now I can play things. So I will exhaust Barrow Downs and exhaust Boromir to play the Hauberk of Brightmail. It's going to give him +2 body to a maximum of 9. So he is at a 9 now, but it's also going to score me 2 points. Then we'll go to Moria, and I'll actually use Concealment. Tap Thorin, he's a scout, to cancel 1 attack against this company. So I cancel the orcs 4 strikes with 7 prowess, which is a great time to have that. So then they enter the site, and I get to play stuff. Let me see if I have a way. I don't. So I'm just going to tap Gildor here and Moria. Let me make sure that's correct. You know what? I'm not going to use Concealment there. I should have used it earlier. I'm just going to take the strikes. So there's 4 strikes. One's going on Thorin, one's going on Gildor. One is going on Keeley, and then there's 1 extra. So the want to go on -1 on Thorin. He's at 5. He gets +2 against orcs, so he's at 7. +2 from his weapon, so he's at 9. But it's 9 -3 because he's not tapping against a 7. So a 6 to a 7, there's no way for him to fail. So he passes. Gildor is also +2 against orcs, so he's a 7 -3 because he will tap actually. He's just a 7 against a 7. He succeeds. And then Keeley, who could bite the dust here, is a -2 against a 7. So it's a 5. He got a 5, and he will be fine. Then I'm going to tap Moria and tap Thorin to play the Book of Mazarbul. Only playable at Moria. Maybe stored. Not true. Hold on. I see the problem here. I have Lucky Search. That gets me a free item. That doesn't matter anyway. So that's fine. I'll just play the book here on Thorin. And I need to store it at a dwarf hold. What's a dwarf hold? I played the male with Boromir, not at Moria. Rowley. Can you guys tell me what a dwarf hold is? I'm playing this deck completely wrong. You ever have that realization, Bryce? You get about halfway in, you're like, I could do this way better now knowing what's in my deck. Yep, that's exactly what I meant. Andre saying Iron Mountains. Where are these Iron Mountains? Blue Mountain Dwarf Hold. Blue Mountain Dwarf Hold. Where would one find that? Oh, way over here. Okay. It's time to go on a journey, I guess. Where's the Iron Dwarf Hold? Is that over here on the edge of the map somewhere? Northeast are Iron Hills. There they are. Okay, so you got to go way somewhere to dwarf it up. That's fine. We'll go to the end of the site phase. I can hold 6 cards because Palando. So I'll discard 1 and draw 1. We'll go to the untap phase. And now we got to make some decisions. think I'm going to go back to Rivendell and try to recover. So they're both going to aim for Rivendell. We're going to start with Boromir. I'm going to a Haven, so I'll draw off of the Barrow Downs for 1. Our places like the Blue Mountain Dwarf Hold, also hordes. So they're going wilderness, say Haven at a -2. So I need 9s. Got it. Second one. Failed. So we'll get a wilderness, see if Boromir can handle it. Lure of Nature. Does not affect hobbits and dwarves. That's nice. A character receives 2 corruption points. Target character makes a corruption check for each wilderness in his company site path at that point in the movement hazard phase. Can't be duplicated on a character. During his organization phase, a character with this card may tap to remove it. Make a roll that it's greater than 4. So it comes into play. I'm going to put it on Boromir. And he's going to make a corruption check at +2. Because of the he takes 2 corruption checks at 3. So let's read the corruption check entry. Make a roll. If the result's greater than my corruption point, nothing happens. So he's at 3. So I basically need to not roll a 2 or a 3 twice. He didn't. Second one. He's fine, but I have to try to get rid of that later. And then they arrive at Rivendell. Same thing with Thorin's group. They're going from wilderness to wilderness to wilderness to Haven. And this is a -3, but I will get a draw 2. So this will inform my decisions. Which is going to be a -3. So I need a 10 to be safe. So 3 wilderness before I get to the Haven. Got an 8. Wolves, 3 strikes. All 3 of them are getting strikes. Thorin is at 5, 6, 7 because of his sword. -3 is 5 against this 8. He got it. Gildor is a 5, -3 is 2, and needs a 6. He'll go ahead and tap, actually. So 5 to 8 needs a 3. Got it. Keeley is -2, so he's a 1, 2, and 8. Need a 7. Missed. So he's going to take a body check. He's fine. But I don't defeat the wolves, just barely. And then second wilderness check. I failed. Lure of Nature. Worst thing for me is Thorin at this point. He's at a 5 corruption. And there's 3 wilderness, 2 at this point. So he makes 2 checks, and I need a greater than 5. Got first one. This could be the end of the game. I got the second one. Thank the maker. Third wilderness. Get it, and that'll hit me at my hazard limit. So this is it. Searching Eye. Cancel any card requiring a scout skill before it is resolved, or cancel any ongoing effect that required a scout skill to play. So nothing happens there. And then I arrive at Rivendell. Then we'll go to the end of the turn. I'll keep my hand. Start of the turn will untap. I'm at a Haven, so wounded stuff will kind of recover. Then we'll go to the organization phase, and I'll do these Lure of Nature tests. So first we'll do Boromir. If I roll and I get more than a 4, I discard his Lure of Nature, which I did, so that'll go away. And then we'll do the same thing for Thorin. He fails, so he's going to keep it. And let me see how that's going to work now that he keeps it. So I think every time he hits a wilderness at this point, he's going to take a corruption check until that goes away. So I can tell you right now, he's not going to be going anywhere for a second. Okay, so I'm looking at some cards here. It's kind of cool because the point cards in your hand dictate the story and also what you want to be doing. As an example, I have this in Rune Shield. It's a horde item and it's unique. So I have to go somewhere there's hordes for me to play it. Oh, Lure of Nature doesn't affect dwarves as per the text. So instead I put it on Gilder. And then he'd be totally fine at this point. That shield's pretty good. I also have the Min of Dwarvenian, which is a faction. Do you know where the Men of Dwarvenian playable at Shrell Kane? Let's see where's Shrell Kane. Do we know? Where does this deck want to take me? Let's get this card in. Does anyone know where Shrell Kane is? I'm sure chat will come through. East. Way east. Way east. So this deck wants to go to the Iron Hills, the Lonely Mountain, et cetera, et cetera. That makes sense. That's what it told me it wanted to do. So I think that's what I'll do, ultimately. Let's play a character. I want to play Ballin. So I'll probably end up leaving Palando and Gildor, the old nature obsessed. And I'm going to send my dwarves and Boromir. Heal influence here. Heal influence here. So I'm at 5 plus 8 is 13 plus 4 is 17 plus 4 is 21 to my 30. Technically 28 because of Stormcrow. All right, so I think I'm taking this company out. Now, Keeley is not wounded, so he would recover in due time. I kind of want to find a nice middle ground. Let's go ahead and put this back here. Technically, that'll stay. We'll get rid of Cap. Let's see. What's the best path to get over to the Iron Hill Dwarf Hold? Because I want to drop off that book. I also want to, where did we say the hordes were? Lonely Mountain, a horde? Someone saying Lorien, then Iron Hills. Where are the Iron Hills? If I'm at Lorien, I can go 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't quite get to the Iron Hills. Oh, I can do 4 between, right? So could I technically go from Lorien through the Anduin Vales? Oh, there it is. Anduin Vales, Woodland Realm, Northern Rovanian, Iron Hills. Rowley saying Lonely Mountain, Ire Rock, Dancing Spire. Oh, those are the hordes. So I think Lonely Mountain would be a good place to go to play my horde items. So I almost think I go Lonely Mountain, then I go from the Lonely Mountain to the Iron Hills, and then I go from the Iron Hills to Shrell Kane. That's kind of my pathway. So yeah, let's move this company. to Lorien. So we're going Haven to Haven. I will draw 2. I just drew Durin's Axe. That seems like a fun time. That's a major item. So this is going, it's attempting to go to Lorien here. And technically this is wilderness, 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 and it's a -2. So I need a 9 and it's 4 wildernesses in a row. So let's go first one. Got a 7, so we'll draw 1. Giant spiders. 2 strikes is the body check for the non-wizard character wounded by giant spiders equals their body. They are discarded. There's just a 10 with 2 strikes. Let's go ahead and play a concealment. I'm going to tap Thorin and just cancel this outright. This is my first hazard. Let's go second hazard. Failed it. River. Company has moved to the site this turn and does not have a ranger. It must do nothing during the site phase. Totally fine by me. Third. Failed it. I'm failing a lot of these tests today. Direwolves, 4 strikes. They're all 8s. So we're probably just going to take this one. Okay, let's go ahead and take it. They're all going to take a strike. Keeley is tapped, so it's a -1. So 2 to the 8. Fails. We'll make a body check. He is gone. Thank you for playing the game. Balin is a 4. Let's go ahead and tap him. So he'll be a 4 to an 8. Successful. Thorin is a 5 -1, so it's 4. Then he gets his +2 benefit, so 6 to the 8. No way for him to fail. And then Gildor is not even with me. He's with Polindo. But Boromir, on the other hand, is a 6 -3, needs a 5, fails it. And his body check is a 9. So odds are he's gone. Oh no. That's very bad. Very bad. And the wolves wrecked me. I've been getting destroyed by these hazards today. Just destroyed. And final hazard check is a 7, so I'll fail it and get the card. Lost in the wilderness. You may play 1 additional hazard for each wilderness. Oh no, but I'm at my hazard limit, so it doesn't matter. No, I'm at a +3 hazard limit because there's 3 wilderness here. So we'll keep going down. Here's a brigands, 2 strikes. If they wound a character, they must immediately discard an item of the defender's choice. So Balin is at a 3 to an 8. He got it. And then Thorin is at a 6 to an 8. And he gets it. So I actually defeat the brigands and score the point. And then they arrive at Rivendell, which is just brutal. Oh, that's right. I can transfer Boromir's item. So I will transfer that mail to Balin. So he's going to get +2 body check. That is helpful. That's still bad. Just losing characters left and right. Sorry, Boromir. Okay. I'm going to go to the end of the turn. And we'll ready everything because I am at Rivendell. So now we're going to make our jump. Riley's saying since all the characters were tapped, you probably wouldn't see Thorin take a hit from Brigands because the deck would get to the side. So it'd probably be Dory and Balin at that point. But I did roll well enough that it doesn't much matter. All right, this is the big play. I'm kind of coming around the corner on this deck, and this is kind of where it's either going to happen or not. So I'm going to move Palindo and Gildor over here because they're not as relevant right now. So I'm basically moving from Lorien to the Lonely Mountain. Gotta love the art in this game. So it's going to be Wilderness, whatever this is, Borderlands, Wilderness, and Lonely Mountain. I have 3 characters. Let me see if I want to play anything else. Nope, we're fine. So it's Wilderness, Borderlands, Wilderness. And it's going to be at draw 2. And I'm at a -2. Oh, nice. I also got Bow of Dragonhorn and Iron Hill Dwarves. And I'm heading to the Iron Hill. So that's good. So now I see exactly what this deck. I did not want to go that direction, so I'm glad I didn't. So let's do some tests. First is Wilderness, and we're at -2. 8 -2, I'll take it. Lost in the Wilderness. So my hazard limit is up by 2 because there's 2 Wilderness in this path. Then we're gonna go Borderlands. I'll take it. First time getting some Borderlands up in here this game. Second hazard, Call of Home. Playable on a non-wizard character that is not the bearer of the One Ring. The character's player must make a roll. Return the character to the player's hand if the result plus his unused general influence is less than 10. Any one item held by the character removed in this fashion may automatically be transferred to another character in his company. All other non-follower cards target character controls are discarded. Oh, man. A roll and my unused general influence. So I believe I'm at 8 plus 5, 13. My unused general influence is 7 plus my roll. I basically need a 3. Otherwise, I'll just go home and cry. I guess I'm already home. I rolled a 10, so I passed that, but crazy. That could wreck me. So that was the second hazard, second check. We'll check for the Woodland Realm, which is another Borderland. I actually passed that one. Then we'll get a Wilderness from Northern Rovanian. Failed it. William, it's a big old troll. And let's go ahead and use. Actually, if I defeat this strike, it's 11. I'm at 5, 6, 7. I'm going to be dwarfy here. I'm going to play the dwarves are upon you. So it gets +2 against this attack, and I'll use Thorin. So I'm at 7, 8, 9 to his 11. There's really no way for me to fail. I succeed. I defeat William, and I actually get to score the points from him. I forget you can do that. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4 hazards so far. My hazard limit was 4. So, but I did draw Lost in the Wilderness. So it's a hazard limit of +2. So we'll keep rolling. And I get another one, which will be Wilderness. Eyes of the Shadow. Mainly played if Gates of Morning is not in play. Hazard limit is increased by 2 for each moving company with a size of less than 4. It also contains a wizard or non-ranger character with a mind of 6 or more. Not true. Permanent event though. So that'll stay out. And then we'll make one last roll. Which is a 7. So we'll get one last card from the old Wilderness. It's a Lure of Nature. It doesn't affect hobbits and dwarves. Not playable by anyone currently. So that will be just fine by me. Then we arrive at the Lonely Mountain. It's got a dragon attack. Lonely Mountain, is that where Smog is? Yeah. Smaug. Do I enter? Do I enter indeed? So I basically just have to take the strike, but that's what Dory's for, right? Just to get destroyed here. Ryan Roper saying I can just wait till next turn. I mean, I kind of like if I wait though, I'd have to stay here again. So I think I just take it with Dory and then play something on Ballin. Ryan Roper says, yeah, you can let Dory just distract Smog. That worked out real well in the books. Pardon the noise here. Like I said, playing Middle-earth CCG is like reading a book. So I've basically been reading for 3 hours straight. I guess we started late, so 2 hours straight. Yeah, I'm just gonna take this strike. Let's go. Dory's gonna exhaust. So he's a 3. It's a 14. So if I roll an 11, I defeat this strike, which would be great. I didn't roll an 11. So Dory's gonna make a body check. And he failed the body check. So he's gone. I've literally, I feel like I've gotten so lucky in every other game I played of this. The number of rolls that I'm getting hazards at and the number of times I'm failing my body checks is so much higher than it's normally been. But anyways, I enter the Lonely Mountain. And I'm going to exhaust Bowen. Let me look at what my options are here. So I can basically either play, what can I play here? Minor, major, major. Let's play Durin's Axe on Balin. So it's +2 prowess or +4 if held by a dwarf. So he's +4. He's now an 8. And this is not the horde though. That's the next turn. So these dwarves are going to get crazy. I see exactly what's happening and I love it. This is awesome. Okay, Rivendell is going to go back over here. And I'm going to go ahead and move Eyes of the Shadow here. So we're going to the end of turn. Start of the turn. All my stuff ready. Raul is saying dragon automatic attack equals horde. Play that shield. Oh, so it doesn't say horde. But I can only play one thing, right? Because they were both, I had to tap to play it. Oh, and I have Thor's map somewhere. I don't have Thor's map in my hand. I think that got discarded earlier. I think I should play the axe because Balin's already got the Habrick. And it's worth 4 points versus the shield's 3. Obviously the shield can cancel an attack every turn. Yeah, so I'll just stick to that. Okay, next round, and they're over here at the Lonely Mountain. I want to see if you can even see that. Yeah, you can see that. That's just right there on the screen. Great. Okay. So the strategy told me to leave Palando at a haven. So they'll hang out there. Oh, I see. someone's saying it's a bit of a waste to play a major item or a greater item is playable because greater items are harder to come by. The Iron Hill Dwarf Hold. I want to look at that and see what's playable there before I commit to playing Durin's Axe. Iron Hill Dwarf Hold. Iron Hills. So what kind of location is this? Doesn't say anything. It's just a dwarf hold. What can I even play there? I can only play the faction. Okay, I'm going to stick with Durin's Axe. I want to be mean against attacks. And there's only a couple rounds left before I get to the end of my deck, which it signifies the end of the game for me. So they're going to move from Lonely Mountain to the Dwarf Hold, which is just wilderness location. And my hazard limit's 2 now. Draw is 3. I'm so almost at the end of my deck. Nice. Oh, that's nice to have. So let's go ahead and roll. Wilderness, and then the location. I failed the wilderness. It's a Hjorn, awakened plant, 1 strike. May also be played, et cetera, et cetera. It's a 10. So let's just score a point. Balance at 4, 8. So I'll go ahead and tap. So I really can't fail. Score it. And then wilderness again. Failed. Lesser spiders, 4 strikes, 7. So let's go ahead and just play. We'll just take this. Thorin's at a 7. -3 is a 4. -1 from this is a 3, so I need a 4. Got it. Balin's going to be -1, so he's a 7 versus a 7. He can't fail. So I actually defeat the spiders. Technically, it was a 6 to a 7, but he still can't fail. And then that's my hazard limit. So I won't even roll for the Iron Hill Dwarf Hold. And then when I'm there, I'm going to attempt to play the Iron Hill Dwarves. Playable Iron Hill Dwarf Hold if the influence check is greater than 8. Dwarves are +2 against it. Thorin specifically says he's +3 against it. So he's +5 to the 8. So I basically just need to roll a 3. I forgot I had cram too. That would have been really helpful. Raul saying realistically, any opponent with a brain would not play creatures against those dwarves. It's just free points. That's true. But some of those creatures have been really nasty. So I basically need a 3. And what happens if I fail that? I passed it, so I'll get to play it. But if you fail against a faction, do you discard the card? Thor trying to balance up there on the mountains. Oh, plus unused direct influence, really. So I way past that test. Which Thorin's built to do, so that makes a lot of sense. So that taps. And I'm almost seeing in my deck, so I'm trying to basically get these things into play. And I really like the horde items. Now that I know that it's just where dragons are, the card Not at Home is so good. Canceling a dragon attack is amazing. Need that. I do like that. Okay. So we're going to move from the Iron Hills to Shrell Cane. So it's going to be Wilderness, wilderness, borderlands, location. And let's go ahead and grab Shrell. So it's a 3. Might deck me. Nope, we're getting close though. Man, so many horde items. So I get it. You basically go to a horde place, cancel the strike, and then have a card that lets you play 2 of your items at the same location. Like that, and that's you're just trying to keep doing that. Which makes a lot of sense. So we'll make our checks at -3. Let's take a wilderness. Dire wolves. I'm tired of you. And technically Ballin's ready. Let's go ahead and play a concealment. Or do I just ace it? I think so. So Ballin is at 8, -3 is a 5. So I need a 3. Got it. And then Thorin is at 5, 6, 7, -3 is a 4. My odds are pretty good. Got it. And technically they're both -1. So, but I'd still defeat the wolves. I get what you're saying. I don't think they would keep playing them. I just keep chopping these up. Second location, failed it, and that'll be my hazard limit. So this is going to be this one. What is that called? Borderlands. Orc Warriors, 3 strikes at a 7. I'm at 7 here, or now I'm at 8, -3, 5. So I can't fail. And then he's at 5, 6, 7, -3, 4. Failed. So he will take a body check. And I failed. Oh no. Thorin out. I guess I keep. Is there a limit to how many items a character can have of a certain type? All right, and that makes a lot of sense. That would be a very good strategy. I could have played the shield at Lonely Mountain, moved over to Over Hollow, used the shield to cancel the strike, and then played another horde item. So I'm going to keep Wormsbane because it's 4 points, definitely 4 points. So we'll hold on to that. Oh, you know what? They are orcs. So let's look at Thorin real quick. +3 prowess against orcs. So he actually succeeded. That's better. I was terrified for about half a second there. So I'll defeat the orcs. They would never play those orcs against me. Then I arrive at Shriel Cane. I got my 2 hazards, and now I can play some stuff. So let's grab those. Men of Dorwinian. My unused general influence is what? 13, 7. So 7, looking for the Men of Dorwinian, need a 6. There's no way for me not to get it. So I scored those points. Tap this site. And then where's the nearest horde? I think I have basically 1 turn left to play something. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to store the book. How do I store the book? Let me read the story and items thing. So I can store items at havens. A corruption check is required, and stored item counts toward your points. So I'm going to try to store the book before I move from that last location, the Iron Hills of Dwarfhold. So I have to make a corruption check. I'm at 2, 3, 4, 5. And I just discarded this card. Let me grab it. Because it was in my hand. So I would have just played it. So I'm going to make it's called a friend or 3. For every character in the influencing character's company, which is 2, a friend of 3 gives +1 modification to an influence check or to a corruption check made by a character in the same company. So I'm +2. My corruption total is a 5. So I basically have to roll a 4 or better, which I did get. Otherwise, getting rid of this item would have been too great of a burden. I would have gone crazy. So I'm going to actually store the Book of Mazerbal before I moved along. And then now we're back to the normal turn. I effectively just want to try to get to a horde location. Lonely Mountains aren't going to work, but I can get to Over Hollow. So I'm going to go Wilderness, no, Borderlands, Wilderness, whatever that type is. Shadowlands, Over Hollow. And let me grab the Over Hollow card. Draws 2. That will deck me. So this is the end of the turn. Ah, and I just should quick beam. I don't have an ally. We'll take our test at -3. Failed that one. So that's Borderlands. It's Wolves. 3 strikes at an 8. 8 -3, 5. I'm just going to try to beat this. Balin, got it. Thorin is at still 7 -3 is 4. Got it. Wolves are defeated. Next one is Wilderness. Failed. Brigands. Kind of the same math. I'm just going to tap Thorin with a concealment and cancel it. Don't want to take any chances at this point. That is my hazard limit now that I'm only at 2 characters. Being a low character counts is actually maybe safer than anything. Then we arrive at Over Hollow. It's got Dragon, 1 strike with prowess 12. I finally understand how to play this deck. I'm going to play Not at Home, cancel a Dragon, Drake, or Troll attack. It must be either an automatic attack or keyed to a site. So we'll cancel it. We have now arrived at Over Hollow. I will exhaust it and Balin and play my Enruned Shield, which I should have done earlier. Ryan Roper was totally right. Never doubt that guy again. Not once, not never. And then that's it. I decked myself. So if I was playing a 1-deck game at this point, I'm the only player. So I could basically choose, the council would get called. If you're playing a 2-deck game, you can technically choose to call the council at various points, which is a different thing. I played the people asking in Rune Shield on Balin. But then I would total up my points. And this is just kind of to see how I did, which was rough. But I had Worm's Bane, which is 4. Habrick of Brightmail, which is 2. Durin's Axe, which is 4 because it's on a dwarf. So that's 10. And Rune Shield is 13. Then I'm going to total up all these villains hazards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's 21. Plus I had the Iron Hill Dwarves, 25. Plus I had Gildor, 26. Plus I had the Book of Mazerbal stored, 31. Plus the Min of Dorwinian, 34. Then I had my characters, which was Thorin and Balin, is 5, which is 39 points scored, which is pretty good. 25 to 30 is a decent benchmark. Now, one of the things that happened in solo, and I need to build a deck for this, but those turns where you just don't move and recover in an actual heads-up gameplay, there's kind of a clock going on, you versus your opponent. And so sitting around like that is a little easier to do in the solo mode than it is in like a typical game, but I'm going to fix that. I'm also looking to build decks for each specific unique character that can only be played at a certain location. Because like when I go to Moria, I think there should at least be odds that I hit Balrog. So that's going to just tell a great story at some point. I'll go to Moria. There's the Balrog, and I have to deal with it. And there's some things coming in here, which is good to think about. Raoul saying in, nope, that's the wrong thing. Ryan River saying you make a corruption check. When do I make a corruption check? Raoul saying also the counselor, you first have to make a corruption check for everyone before you count points for every character, right? All of your characters. So technically, I would have needed to roll various things, and I think that card I played, a friend or three, is something you definitely want to have in your hand going into that moment because you don't want to lose a big character. That's also one of the upsides of storing items is that those items contribute to your corruption total. At the end of the game, you have to make a corruption check for each of those characters. So if you fail, you actually lose what's on them. Andre saying one thing I do is if I'm going to rest for a turn is discard the top card of my deck as a penalty. I mean, I think the real penalty of waiting is ceding tempo to your opponent. So I think for me, the penalty of actually having a deck where there's hazards that can definitely be played on that downturn means that the board's not just staying static when you stand there. I mean, it's not even staying static, you're healing. So right now, without that, it's just totally in your favor. But yeah, it was going back to the reason I created the open world solo format. And I'll go ahead and switch Bryce back to the big camera. I'm going to pop over there. But the reason I created this format in the first place, right, was I wanted to be able to play the game and learn the cards without necessarily having an opponent in a way that somewhat mimicked playing against an opponent. And so like in my mind, right, the getting to use this deck here, by the end of it, I already understood what the deck was trying to do like 10 times better. And it's not ever going to be the exact same thing as playing against a live opponent because, it's pretty hard to simulate basically the pressure they would put on you from scoring points in certain categories and getting unique characters out and that kind of thing. But at the same time, like it creates a nice amount of pressure. And I do think there needs to be some sort of penalty built in for just waiting to kind of mimic that. But all in all, it's pretty amazing how smooth this game runs, especially because it's 25 years old. It's pretty amazing to see. Anything else, people watching out there, especially people that know how the game works? I think at the end, sending those minions out against me that had no chance to get played. I think another way to make it harder is basically if you flip a card and you know what's up, that you don't play the minion unless you think it's a good minion to be playing against you. So if I flip into like, a Brigands and there's like almost no chance it's going to do anything to me. Like if I don't even have to tap characters to deal with it and it's going to fail and give me a point, you could just not do that because obviously even if your opponent drew that card, there's no way they would play it keyed against you just to play it. I saw a comment come through. Arthur saying it can be only if you go in there with 2 or 3 characters. Are you talking about what's it called? Tidings of Bold Spies on your Moria or a Shadow Hold. Raul is saying hazards like Searching Eye don't really work in an environment because it's so specific with its use. What was that key to? What did you say? Searching Eye? What up, Frank? Hope you're doing well, man. David Whitfield saying, are you planning to play through Lord of the Rings, the TCG sometime? We are. We've been doing a throwback series on Thursdays for the Star Wars CCG. And we're basically we opened a box of the first set, we built decks, we played. We opened a box of the second set, we tweaked our decks with those cards and played. And then we actually came back and tweaked our game and played again on the next stream. And so we have a box of each set of that game. And I have a similar situation with the Lord of the Rings TCG. I have a box from the first 10 sets. So it's the Fellowship, 2 Towers, and Return of the King blocks, plus the Reflections, the first Reflection set. And I I had been getting those together because I wanted to experience the game as it came out in that form anyway. And so the reception to the Star Wars CCG series has been pretty strong. So we'll probably at least try it out with Lord of the Rings TCG. And we did a throwback to that last year. And we're using some decks that had cards all the way through set like 14 or 15. And sets like 11 through 14 definitely I don't want to say they jumped the shark, but it's a very different game than I was playing when I was playing the Lord of the Rings TCG back in the day. So I'm really excited to play that game in release order like that. Yeah, Rolly, I agree. I'm definitely, my next step with this system, I'm going to create a hazard deck that is playable when someone doesn't move. I'm also going to create the villain specific decks like the Balrog and stuff. And then I'm going to go back through all the decks and tweak. I've played this several times now since I built the decks originally. And I just want to make it a little tighter where some of the deck cards aren't as good. But part of that is intentional too, right? If you're playing a scout and Searching Eye gets played, that could really ruin your day. And I didn't want every hazard card to just be perfectly playable because the odds are I'm doing the rolls minus the draw ability, right? So it's a 7 minus. And so I'm seeing a lot of hazards. And like when you're playing against a live opponent, sometimes the hazards don't key to the right sites. Sometimes the hazard cards don't really have an effect on you because you are playing dwarves and it's a card that only affects dwarves. So it's a balance of like how often you want to be drawing cards and how often you want those cards to be having like a big impact. That's definitely one thing I recognized when Steve and I were playing heads up is that a lot of times you just draw hazards that aren't that effectual against a specific opponent or where they're going and stuff. So very much trying to thread that needle and walk along that line to make it feel like you are playing against someone. Raul is saying, have you thought about doing anything with on-guard cards which can be used as a threat or bluff by an opponent? I haven't, because the whole on-guard concept is something that I've never really used. We talked about it the first couple of times we were playing, but obviously that's more interesting when you have a live opponent. So it's possible you could mimic that, but I haven't found a clever way to do that felt appropriate. David Whitfield, yeah, I'm looking forward to the Lord of the Rings TCG. I think that'll be definitely a good time. All right, well, we about did it. This was a great time. I love this game. It's going to be one that I probably end up playing on any Thursday when I'm not able to have Steven around. So I'll try to make the updates happen before the next time I bring this to the stream. And at some point, I really want to try a Fallen Wizard deck and a Nazgul deck specifically. So whatever adjustments I need to do to make that happen, I'll probably do that. Otherwise, if you are interested in the game, we have plenty of streams at this point that you can go check out where we're playing it. If you have any questions, you can always comment and let us know. These throwbacks have been really super enjoyable. I do want to give a massive shout out to all our content members. A lot of this content, especially for old games that have just zero way of making us any money, are only possible because of people like that. All the subscribers subscribing to all our games and the content members particularly. It's the fuel that makes the engine run. So shout out to all of you. Thanks for everyone for being here. Rauli and David and Ryan, you guys were super helpful, particularly along the entire stream of the rules. This is a very nuanced game, so I couldn't imagine playing this without you guys. I'm going to get out of here. Stay safe, stay warm, and we'll catch you next week. Hopefully we're back to normal. Currently the plan is to stream, we were originally going to stream the Star Trek CCG the week that the ice hit. So that's currently on the books for next Thursday. And assuming that nothing goes crazy between now and then, we'll be back in the studio on Monday, which will be fun and nice to go back to good cameras. And then we'll be back for Star Trek CCG next Thursday and other throwbacks in the future. So stay tuned, stay safe, and I'll catch you guys later.